truth. Now, I also want to let you know that there is a piece of paper at the front of this building with some pretty impressive signatures on it that says that I'm an apostle. But God has not called me an apostle. What God has told me I am is a watchman. Now, the apostle is prophet, pastor, teacher, evangelist, all wrapped together. And if you're familiar with it, I'm believing that the pastors that are watching this right now are familiar with it. You know that you can wear different hats. Sometimes as a church leader, there's times where you have to be more prophet, more correcting. There's times where you have to be more pastoral, more loving. There's times where you have to be an evangelist and you're leading someone to the Lord, and there's times where you have to be a teacher. You do a lot of teaching as a pastor. Matter of fact, my wife and I have planted 2 churches, and we're about to plant a 3rd. And I will also say that I have a lot of respect for pastors. Planting these 2 churches has been the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Here I head up a large radio program nationwide, and planting a couple little churches gives me a lot more headaches and heartaches and frustrations than this big radio program. Anyway, as a local pastor here of a church here in Topeka, I was one day invited to join a group of Spirit-filled pastors. They said, we just want to have a meeting, no agenda, we just want to fellowship together. And I said, I think that's great. So we met down here at Perkins on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and we had breakfast together. And it wasn't too many meetings, even though we only met for an hour, hour and a half most of the time. A couple of meetings went to 2 hours. But it wasn't too long before I began to see, compared to these other pastors, I'm not a pastor. So I want to tell you right up front that I'm not trying to offend you. I really am not. I began to see that comparing myself to these other pastors, these guys are so kind and so loving, and their whole life, it's like, exists around not offending people. And I mean, it's like I couldn't even be in the room, because when I just open my mouth compared to these guys, I'm offensive. And I'm so direct and I'm so harsh. And to me, watching them talk, it was like, come on, guy, would you just spit it out? You know, talk to me, you know, talk direct, you know. And they're just so kind and loving and indirect and just wonderful, and you just love them. And I just want to let you know right up front, my personality is not like that. I'm direct. I'm sometimes harsh. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I'm not trying to offend you. But I am going to show you a lot of Bible. The only thing I ask is that you put your decision, you put what you've read, what you've been taught, what your denomination tells you aside, and I'm going to ask you to go all the way through to the end of this teaching before you make a decision. Because I believe by the time you get to the end of this teaching, and you have thoroughly researched what, last time I counted, it was 371 scriptures, and I know I added some more to it since then. So we're going to thoroughly take a look at the rapture, what the Bible and what Jesus said about the rapture. And here's what I believe it's going to do for you. I believe it's going to settle in your heart once and for all how God protects His people. God is going to protect His people. I'm thoroughly 100% behind that. The question is how He's going to do it. And I'm going to ask everybody to get a copy of this particular talk and give this to your pastor. Do not try to ask for some donation. You want to just walk up and say, please, watch all of it. Watch all the way to the end of it, just for me. Now, let me just tell you, as a pastor, if you ask your pastor to watch something, if you ask it in love and kindness, and if you are supportive in that church, both with your time, your diligence, your attendance, and of course, yes, your tithes and your offerings, your pastor will watch this. Give him some time. Pastors are actually very busy. Now, why am I doing this? Again, I'm not trying to attack, but I'm trying to protect Christians, especially church leaders, from scoffers. Barry Smith told me a very important story. Barry Smith was from New Zealand, came in and made a videotape called Back Door to the New World Order. Prophecy teacher for many years, won a lot of souls to the Lord. This brother's going to have many, many souls in heaven. And he told me a story. He said, before World War II, He said the churches in France and Germany and England were all full. He said, but you see, they'd been taught the pre-trib rapture. And he said when the bombs hit the cities from World War II, the people left the churches. And they got mad. They got angry. They attacked verbally their pastors because they expected a rapture. They were told that they weren't going to go through any hard times, that the rapture was going to protect them. They left the churches and they have not returned. Most pastors, I believe, have never thoroughly investigated the case for anything but a pre-trib rapture. That's what all of the prophecy teachers teach. That's what all of the big name books are about. That's everybody you see on TV, everybody, all the big books, everybody, anyone that's successful in Christianity is pre-trib. Pretty close to that, okay? Again, I'm not trying to